Mr. Byers? Ms. Cochran?
Here.
Ms. Falter?
Here.
Ms. Joseph?
Here.
Mr. Hilborn?
Here.
Ms. Steinbeck?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here.
Vice Chairman Bennington?
Here.
Chairwoman Santos?
Here. The next item on the agenda is for approval of the motion summary for the meeting that we had last week.
I'm sorry, Mayor Jane, do you want to excuse?
Oh, we have to excuse.
Go ahead.
May I have a motion to excuse Jeremy, please?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Who seconded?
Item 2 on the agenda is the approval of motion summary for the meeting held last week as recorded and transcribed, and you should have received those. I think I got them maybe Tuesday or yesterday. Yes. Are there any questions, comments, or may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Have a second? That was Stephanie. Second?
Second.
Kathy? Any comments, changes, discuss? Who seconded?
Okay, that was Megan.
Okay,
Got it.
that's your job.
We're starting off well tonight.
I was confused.
I try to say the name so you get it.
I always try to make at least one motion or second to prove I was here when I'm on a committee. So
Yeah.
I spread it out.
Are there any additions, corrections, or changes to the minutes as transcribed? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those-
I will abstain simply because I wasn't here. It has nothing, no reflection on the secretary. She does an excellent job, but I just wasn't here and I don't feel I can vote.
Not
Any
offended.
opposed? We have one abstention.
Thank you.
We have set aside 15 or 20 minutes in the agenda to go over the submissions of the public.
Well, the good news is our second streak, we still have not had any other submissions from the public. I keep it on there just in case, but unless you know one that I don't.
Well, I think that it's only fair to the commission that they know about the public records request. Since it
I'd
went,
be happy to discuss it if you'd like, or you can.
I don't know if we need to discuss it. I was just gonna
Tell
tell them.
them, me or you.
You can tell them, I don't care.
Okay. I got a records request from Andy Brush, who was at the one meeting, asking for if there were any public records created on Charlotte's phone during that meeting. Whenever I get a request, I ask the person, do you have any records? I sent to Charlotte. She said she didn't. So I responded back. So
There are no records.
There are no records, and lacking records, he wanted a statement that I was screwing around with personal business and not doing the commission business. And I declined to provide that as well, because I think I'm fully engaged when I'm here. And I only wanted the rest of you to know it because he copied it to all of city council, and I would hate for you to hear it in city hall.
And just to clarify, just so everyone knows, if you do public work, actually create a document on your cell phone, it could be a public record. So that's why I asked if you have any. I would never go through and look at your cell phone unless I had reason to believe so, but we would never do that. So it's not like you're going to have Darren looking at your phones. But Charlotte's right. We would never, you don't have to provide a statement as part of a public records request. I always just say, I asked, we have no records, and that's kind of the end of it. So as far as I'm concerned, it's done. But I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
All right. It's kind of a bit of excitement.
And I'll throw my pen.
Could have told you. I could have told you.
At least we didn't get tackled or tased.
On
Yeah.
the next item, Darren provided drafts of proposals requested by the commission. He passed it out again tonight, but it did come by email. Do you have another copy? Oh, you got it. There you go. Let's go through. I always hate to start a meeting by saying I have to leave, but I have to leave at 7:25. But Dan's willing to pitch in if he needs to.
We have a chance of, depending on how much stuff, we have a chance of making that.
I think so.
Oh, yeah.
Section 66, Darren, you want to go through these with us?
Yeah, and I'll try to go pretty fast. So one of the things I did was looked at this issue of the departments that were in the charter, which ones need to be and which ones weren't. And so what I tried to do is mirror the language that was in the other departments. I think it's utilities and parks and recreation, and kind of say the same thing where council is going to provide for the administration of public works, and they'll be administered by whatever department, bureau, office, the city manager, under the city manager as determined by ordinance. So it's just, that's kind of mirrors the language. It clarifies it and it makes it a little easier to figure out. So I took out the duties of public works because that's not really necessary. So those two kind of go together, 66 and 67.
And striking the Department of in Article 9, that was, we just are not labeling it as a department.
Right, because it could be a bureau, it could be something under a bigger department. So since it's just going to be something defined by ordinance, we're just going to say this is public works, it's got to get handled by ordinance somehow by council.
I have a question. We had requested last time that we had gotten together to see a current organizational chart.
That was not sent. I thought,
I did not receive.
I
it.
didn't receive it.
well, I am really embarrassed and I'm not going to blame anybody else. I did request that get sent out with the packet. I just don't have it, but I asked the person who had it to send it. And I guess it didn't happen. So what I will do is I will make sure that happens tomorrow.
Okay.
And I do apologize. I literally went in the next day and said, can you attach that to the next packet? But I didn't follow up.
All right. Thanks, Kathy. I had forgotten about that.
I literally had on my notes to make sure everyone got it, but yes, it didn't happen. So I apologize.
70, section 70.
70.
Oh, are there any questions or comments on 66 and 67? Are we good with those? Okay.
Under 70, this is the one where I had drafted some changes, but I hadn't had a chance to show the person who's filling that role, Jackie Walker. I did show her, and she said it looked great to her, so I kind of took out my last stumbling block. But I also had given this kind of preemptively, so we hadn't really discussed it as a group, because I said I'd like to share it with her first. So I showed this to you last time, but we didn't really discuss it.
Any comments or questions on 70? No. If Jackie's happy with it, I'm happy with it.
I think she was sad to give up control of the general storerooms and warehouses of the city.
I'm sure she was. And 71, I assume that you showed that to Jackie as well?
Yes, I showed them. Those are the two that I
Okay.
showed to her. And basically, she issues policies and procedures right now. This other stuff about requisitions just doesn't happen anymore. So
Okay. Any questions in 71? 75,
this was a,
but. It was a but.
it was a but. There was two buts, and they are
Two
both gone. That's the only change there.
Thank you.
I'll call that the Mary Jane rule.
That's right.
76 is a similar change. You might not be able to see it. Instead of increased or decreased, it's
Oh, the
explaining kind of what
Ds, yeah.
increases or decreases in either services. No substantive change. That was another style one. I forget who caught that though, but it was good.
Where is that?
It's like that. It's near the end.
Oh, I see. it.
Full sentence from the bottom.
Wow.
It's hard to make that stand out with it's only being one letter, but
Any other comments on 76? 77,
77, basically, I got a sense that we want to kind of make it available, but we don't do this paper copy thing. So this is something I came up with after the meeting. The annual appropriation budget shall be made available on the city's website electronically or via another method determined by ordinance. So why I did that was council might say, hey, we want to have 10 copies, or who knows if we're going to have a website. Why I put website electronically is we can email things to people too, or give it to them on a USB. So I just want to get away from having to put it paper copies or like in a paper. Give flexibility.
should someone from the public request a paper copy via public records request, and you would provide?
Yeah, we give it to them that way too,
I
yeah.
assumed. All right.
It does happen. Some people don't have computers.
77, any other questions or comments? Thank you. 83.
83 is simply removing a date from 85. It's a cleanup thing, but we've been pretty consistent in trying to strip out old silly dates. So that's all that changes.
And 84.
84, we got this sense, well, first of all, we changed the title because vacancy was pretty vague. So I just made this up, finance director prohibited from holding other position. And then I added this except as otherwise provided in the charter, because there is a section that says that finance director can be acting city manager. And rather than mess with two sections, I've just said, hey, look, if we give you power somewhere else, it kind of exempts it to kind of make a match.
All right. You all in agreement with 84? 85.
What did I change it? I might have just dragged it over. Do we have a change in 85? I'm looking at my notes here. I might just drag that over accidentally, so there might not be a change there. Let me look at my notes. Oh, there is change actually, if you want to keep it. This is the one with the commas, so you really can't see them.
Oh,
second line.
I see it.
Oh, see, after of.
Yeah, you had me move the commas around, so there's, and the one after finance is bold, you can really tell that, right? So yeah, there's a bold one after who, delete the one after of, and then there's a bold one after finance.
Well, even though it's kind of petty, it does make that sentence make more sense.
Yeah, it was good. I agreed with the change. I mean,
Yeah.
you can hardly, I'll have to find a way to make it more obvious what we're doing there, but that's, I almost missed it, but there was a change.
Okay, 86.
86, I think we just wanted to change the title, duties generally of Director of Finance, because it just said duties generally, and we kind of felt like duties generally of what? I don't think we had any substantive changes to that one, just the name there, clarify that.
Is everyone okay with 86? 89.
89, and we heard testimony from Dean Stellis, our current finance director, that while that 10th of the month often is possible based on when they get the numbers and when that finance committee can meet, sometimes that 10th isn't possible. And I think we might have even heard from Carol and said, look, they just really, as a council member, they just really need it by sometime during that each month. So I just struck out by the 10th day of each month and said each month the director shall prepare for a submission to council.
I think that satisfies the intent, yes? 89.
And
90 you're still working on?
90 we're still working on. That's the really hairy one, and I've given that to David. He did ask, since it was such a turnaround time and his primary job is being a prosecutor, if he could do it at the next meeting, and I said that was fine because I'd rather
Okay.
not have him rush that weird stuff. So it will come.
And 92, I
90
think this is the one Dean said.
Yeah, we don't keep things in safe deposit boxes or vaults anymore. All securities are, I mean, if you think about your own stock trading accounts, all these online things and stuff. So we don't actually have paper to be keeping in a vault. So we just crossed that part out and left the rest the same.
And I'm fine with that. I thought about this after the meeting and wondered if there are old bonds, paper bonds that need to be kept someplace.
I'm going to guess, I can follow up and ask. I'm going to guess maybe not.
I don't think it needs to be in the charter.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Because like they roll off, I know we've paid off a lot of our
Right.
bonds, and so the new ones for the past X number of years would have been this electronic. So bonds aren't like stocks that last forever. Eventually you pay them and they're gone. So it's a good question though.
95.
So 95, I just struck in its
Struck it
entirety
altogether.
because we don't do any of that stuff anymore. And I'm actually, while some of these other changes are nice, we don't need them. This one I think might be important because we don't issue bonds like that. And so it could be a problem for someone who says, hey, I don't have a paper bond, my stock account's not legit. So that's a good one to strike just for protecting people, I think.
Okay, and then we move to tentatively approved.
So tentatively approved, this is just, we don't have to talk about these right now. This is the collection of everything else to date that we've done this process on. That way you can, I wanted to give it to you so you can look at them in advance of our next meeting. So if we had a problem, we can head off having another meeting. If we come in and say, hey, let's tweak these other things that we've done, because my anticipation is if we get through the rest today, we can vote on this entire list as a package, assuming we all agree, and be done together. So we can go through them if you want, but we've already gone through these
Okay.
before.
Anybody have any questions for Darren on any of that? Terrific. So, item 5 on the agenda is to review Articles 20. And Jack, in deference to you, we stopped at 20
Oh,
because we thought you being on civil
Civil
service,
service,
since it
oh,
was
well.
created in the '07, you might want to be the expert on these and make sure that we're
Well,
on target.
yeah, I read through those and I think they're fine.
So we see no changes to 89?
No, to, is it 89?
Section 89,
Oh,
Article 20, Section 99, I'm sorry.
99.
Yeah, 99.
I don't have anything.
Anybody else have any problems with 99? How about 100?
I got to be honest, I'll give you a little preview. I didn't really identify any needed changes for the rest of the document. So I could make anything we come up with, but I hadn't identified anything on my list.
If we're being consistent in 101, we have a date there that could be removed.
Yeah.
I can take it out.
And we've done it other places, I know, so.
Yeah, I'll take that out.
So the
we-
census will give
do we
just
commit-
appointments of members.
In the charter to what the length of a term is for a civil service commission? Or the fact
to a
that
death
they
be
are.
part.
Well, it's,
I think it's
a
in the-
7-year term, I believe.
I think it's done by, I think it's in the ordinances, isn't that, Jack?
I think it is. And I just retired from civil, chair of civil service. I've been on there for 19 years. It's Dan's fault. He asked me to be on it.
You took my place. And I was
Yeah.
14 years.
Yeah, and I remember Michelle calling me last fall and said, Jack, you want to re-up for another 7 years? And I thought, enough's enough. I've done my duty, and I think I'm just going to quietly retire, which is what it is. So 7 years is what it is, but I don't know. It says that, I think, in ordinance.
I think
I'm
it's
not
in
sure
the-
exactly where it says that, to be honest with you.
So all these,
Kind of the same question I have for both the Civil Service Commission and the City Planning Commission.
City Planning Commission.
Is, do we
What
want
is
to commit anything to the charter that speaks to length of term, or the fact that they kind of roll against each other, right? So not everybody would leave at the same time.
Like just staggered, yeah.
I
Yes.
believe, and again, my iPad is not with me, but every commission and board that is referenced in the charter has its own codified ordinances section that spells out a little bit more detail, and that's where all of them mention terms and actually membership. Civil service doesn't have this, but some of the other boards, commissions say one person has to be from each ward, or someone has to be in the university. So
Okay.
that is there. It doesn't mean we couldn't, if we felt really strongly about it, we certainly could lock it down in the charter, but those are spelled out in our codified ordinances passed by city council.
Okay, good enough for me.
So on section 101, we're going to delete the reference to the 31st day of December in 1953.
Yes.
I think so.
Any other comments or questions regarding that? Okay. Let's move on to Article 21, Cities Planning, Zoning, and Plating. That's that generally word again.
Yeah, you don't like
I don't like the word generally. It's what they do. And this one, Kathy does spell out how the commission is
Mhm.
populated.
Right.
So,
But it doesn't speak to the length of term. I mean, it does say a little bit about how the composition is going to be, though.
And this is one of
I'm
the
kind of
few,
okay with not putting the length of term in charter. I think that makes more sense in ordinance.
do you want me to get rid of generally?
Well, I think for consistency's sake, I don't really care one way or the other, but we're knocking it out someplace.
It's
Should we knock it
dumb.
out
I'm more than happy to take it
everywhere?
out. So I want to make sure everyone's okay with
Where
that.
is the word?
It's in the title.
Where is general?
Title.
Oh, and general.
Planning commission,
Just in
generally. I mean, I don't know why that's there,
Yeah.
so I will strike it out.
Yeah, let's strike it.
It seems like that's what they do.
Yeah,
Generally,
sure.
that's what they do. Any other comments in section 102?
Since 102 references really the composition of the commission, should it maybe say composition of City Planning Commission?
Actually, that's not a bad idea. That's all it's talking
Because
about.
otherwise it's just City Planning Commission, it doesn't really.
The composition.
Oh, I
see.
So city planning commission composition,
Or composition of City Planning Commission, either way.
which one do you like?
I like with the of, but I don't really care.
Well, I'm gonna have to get some input from other people. What do you guys think?
My only thing is Civil Service Commission just says Civil Service Commission.
Well, and theirs is not as artfully written because they have the commission membership and then they also talk about their duties. So it's not as clean as this one.
Mhm.
So I can see why it'd be easier to just put composition here. If you put it up at the top, then it would be composition and they're doing some other stuff too. So,
Okay, makes
Um,
sense.
so I can change the title of civil service too, but for this one, do we like composition of or composition at the end? Mary Jane, you're the grammar police. What do you think?
Composition of.
All right.
Are you changing civil service then or not?
No,
I could put civil service commission composition and duties if you wanted to really be,
My own feeling is just Civil Service Commission and City Planning Commission, but
so you don't want to change the title.
no, I would take off generally. I don't have.
Or take out general,
But I
okay.
wouldn't add anything else to it, I don't think. Just my own thought though, so.
I will sleep well tonight, no matter which we do.
No, I want to fight
Well,
over this. What do you think, Jack?
well, I think if you just say City Planning Commission, it does say it's composed of 7 members, so I don't know. I think we're saying how it's composed.
But also those very first 3 words, there shall be, that is establishing the fact that there will be a planning commission.
then the composition. So it actually is two ideas.
There's two, yeah.
So we don't.
So we'll take it out.
I think
mad?
it's fine, just leave it as city planning. I'm good.
Okay, but generally is still gone. We can all unify behind generally being gone.
So here's a question just for consistency. Is in the city planning, we declare that the members have to be electors.
Yes,
So that means they have to be residents
yes.
Yes, yes.
and that they hold no elective office. Aren't those the same requirements to be
No.
on the Civil Service
Mhm.
Commission?
You're
No, I
an
served-
elector if you're able to vote in your ward,
Okay.
and you're elected official if you're serving like she does as being elected to her.
Okay, but aren't those the same requirements for the Civil Service Commission? No.
Let me look again.
Civil Service Commission, you could be you don't have to be an elector?
You don't have to be in a certain ward.
Do you have to be anything, like a resident of the city and not holding elected office?
I think so.
I think you could be in elected office
Okay.
on Civil Service Commission.
Yeah.
And I gotta be honest, I don't know why they decided that planning, they don't want you to be like a county, recorder, and you could be on civil service. I don't know. I'm sure there was a historical,
It's probably a conflict maybe, and,
yeah,
service.
planning. Planning is a pretty powerful
yeah, they
commission.
They're very,
Okay.
And I guess I'm not going to go off on tangents, I promise, but I will say that what Civil Service Commission does is regulate the hiring of employees within the city. So it's kind of a limited scope, although it's a very important one. Planning touches everybody
Okay.
citywide. So I could see maybe that's why the difference is.
But I think, Kathy, it's a good thing to point out that they should be electors of the city, in the city.
Yeah.
Because under section 101, it just says there'll be a commission consisting of 3 members.
yeah.
I think we should spell out that they need to be residents of the city.
And I don't know whether that's in ordinance or not.
I don't know, but it doesn't mean we can't fix it.
That needs to be spelled out.
Okay, so there shall be a Civil Service Commission consisting of 3 members.
All who,
Being a 6,
Oh.
I would.
Being
use the same
electors of the city of
language as
Delaware?
Electors.
Oh,
You're
just
using it city planning.
3 members being electors of the city of Delaware?
Yeah.
yeah,
That's not the way I would have written it, but it matches the language there, so. Electors,
yeah, I think that's fine.
city.
All right, and 101, we're going to add that language. Is there any other question about 102? Okay, hearing none, let's go on to 103, the official city plan. I served on the planning commission for about 8 years, maybe 9, and I thought this all looked great. I mean, I think it feels like it got cleaned up some other time.
Yeah, the last touch in 84, so it's not from a 1950s thing like some of these are.
Yeah, right.
Any other questions or comments or changes to 103? How about 104? I don't like generally.
Let's strike.
All right, it's
That's
gone.
fine.
And the other question I had was, I don't really have a problem with it, but it says City Planning Commission shall within 25 days, unless council shall extend such period, consider the same report to council. I didn't know whether that was realistic, why it was in there, if it was necessary. I don't know, I was just sort of puzzled by that.
This is
On
my
104.
guess. Yeah, this is my guess. So planning commission is kind of its own separate thing, and they're built to kind of be separate from city council, and they can be kind of, it's overruled if they don't like it. So my guess is because it's not city council and city council has no power over them, they wanted to say, look, you can't just sit on this for months and months as a way to kill it, because what happens is when they vote, council can overturn it. So they're probably
Right.
saying, look, you got 25 days, but if council says, okay, take more time, that's fine, but we don't want you sitting on it and just not acting and kind of killing it that way without letting city council then act on it. Because otherwise they could like pocket veto it, just, hey, we'll have 2 years from now.
Don't want them to act like the U.S. legislature.
It's 25 days, then it's probably reasonable since it's been working all this time.
I can tell you, I have never heard of a request to change it, extend it, and I think the way this planning commission works, they probably would go to council and say, can we have a couple
Right.
more weeks? And they would probably say, fine. So Carolyn, have you ever gotten a request to extend the time? I've never heard one.
I think practically, if because it has to come back to council, and that time council can look at it and say, take it back and work on it some more.
Mhm.
They
But at
often
least
do
council
that.
has the opportunity to review it periodically.
And I think they have done that. I think council has sent things back to them.
Okay, I'm fine with that then. Any other comments or questions on section 104? Fine, section 105. Review recommendation for plans for development. Just
Are
pretty much
all
saying that goes to
members
planning
of the
commission.
planning commission currently city residents? Because like members of the parking commission are not.
I don't know for sure. Karen probably knows better.
You have to get I'd have to get out the list.
Because I'm just.
Are you sure there's people on parking who are not?
It's not.
There's stakeholders on parking.
And they don't live in the city? And that's kind of a,
Business owners?
Oh, that's
John
just a
Ranke.
steering, that's just a steering committee. That has
Okay.
nothing to do
It's
with.
not planned.
No.
Okay.
my impression when we take them is they're all residents of the city, but I don't want to vouch for it. But yeah, these ad hoc committees and
There is
things,
one or two that can be from the county.
you're right.
Like airport, and there's one other one that allows them.
But I think all the planning people currently are. And actually, you know what? I can answer that. There was someone who moved out of the city and they said, can I just finish my term? And we said, no, you cannot. So
Okay.
they are all part of it.
Okay.
But what you're referring to is a parking study committee that they just put together.
Okay.
It's a steering committee from the parking survey that was just completed. Okay.
105, okay, 106. It's pretty much said what their job is.
Use the word
Zoning.
generally again in those seven.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hate that one. I hate that generally thing. Spell it out. Lawyers like to waffle. I'm not a waffler.
I don't like using the word general either, to be honest.
Say generally.
What does waffling mean?
So we're okay with 106?
Vacillating.
Okay.
107?
You want me to get rid of generally?
Generally.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
let's-
It's gone.
You can just generally take those
Just
out.
generally.
Generally
Very
speaking,
good.
are we okay with 107 under plating? Great. 108, recordation and acceptance of plats.
And this is all, I think, what happens
Yep.
now.
No questions, comments, or changes? Wow, we're just zipping through
We
this.
are.
109, planning commission assistants and employees. I
Well,
had no idea planning commission
I
could
didn't
hire
either.
people.
well, yeah, we may want to clean that one up. I mean, because they don't, this is probably back in the, like when Dean was talking about last week, where they had all these different entities that before there was a charter and they kind of rolled them in. I don't know if we,
And it says the phrase "and other employees." I didn't know the city
Mm-hmm.
planning commission could have employees. Are they employees of obviously the city, I guess?
Dan, did they ever have employees when you were city attorney?
Yeah, what they would do is hire firms to work on city
Oh, okay.
plans. So I'm thinking that that's probably what this,
It has to do with
because we did do
studies.
that.
Do you mean
when I was there.
the commission would hire them or the city?
No,
would
the
hire
city would do it, but the commission would pick out, you know.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't be
With
considered
that,
as true
basically.
employees. though.
No, no.
It says at the
Well, it
end
would
of
be
that,
contract
that
employees,
Contract employees, but still.
yeah, but
The employer contract.
I could envision a case where somebody would be brought on as a city employee for a period of time to work on the plan and be paid by the city as an employee, and then knowing that they're going to be phased out when they get their job over with. They could either be a contractor or an employed one, too, which would make a whole lot of difference, so.
well, in the last sentence, it says they may employ or contract with experts and consultants. My problem with that is that they can hire a secretary or other employee, and that person then falls under the jurisdiction of the city manager. And so you're asking your city manager to, in effect, supervise or have responsibility for someone they didn't
They
choose.
did not choose. right?
If it was me, just the way I think things work nowadays, I would probably cross off this whole section with the understanding that it's usually driven by staff when you need all these experts, and we are going to supply a secretary and all that, but it just seems kind of weird because they don't have a budget. So if planning commission were going to decide, hey, we want to hire a consultant, they wouldn't really do that without,
Well, they wouldn't have the expertise, generally speaking, either.
yeah, I just think it's kind of
To even put
unnecessary.
the bids out and all of that.
Who has the most experience with the planning commission, or who's been here? Dan, do you think this
I
would really?
never, I tried to stay away from planning commission meetings because they would always ask me questions I didn't want to answer.
Also, they would often go till midnight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You served 8 years on that?
It was
Goodness.
2000 to 2008,
Wow.
when all that building was going
Yeah,
on and
oh my
all those,
gosh.
yeah, we would often be here till midnight.
Do you think, as someone who was on that commission, do you think this is necessary in any, I mean,
I read through it and I went, I didn't know what they were talking about. We never did it. I don't even think that we ever contracted with experts or consultants. We would say to Dave Eflin or Vince Papsadero, we need somebody to come in and help us with this. And city staff would take care of it for us.
I would probably just cross out the whole section if that's okay with the commission, because
I think it's okay. Just cross it out.
All right. Power of the pen, section 110.
So I have a question here. This pretty much says that council may by ordinance confer new powers. Have any been issued?
not that I know of.
Because this is one where, if so, I would like to see what the powers given were issued to see whether or not it's appropriate to include any of them in the charter.
Or objectively define what the powers could be.
Yeah.
I'll again defer to Mary Jane, who was actually on it, but it seems to me that the things that we've talked about with 100, 102, 5 up through 8, those are the
Those are
processes that
powers.
I'm sure they've done, and that's what I've seen coming out. I don't go to the meetings like Dan didn't. So I don't know of an ordinance that gives them additional powers. I guess in theory, there could be something where they're going to be designated as an appeal board for some building thing or something, but that doesn't exist now. I'm just thinking of what possibly you could designate them as, but I'm not aware of any ordinances that we actively use. There might be one that was passed in 1990 that we've never paid attention to or whatever, but I don't know of any.
You were talking about this parking committee or commission or whatever it is. That's not under planning though, right? That's just a
No,
separate
that's separate.
commission altogether.
Parking and safety is there's being a study done, and then parking and safety decided to have a steering committee from some of the stakeholders and the business owners downtown and getting their input. And then there'll be another one with constituents, but it's got nothing to do with this.
Okay.
Well, striking it or leaving it in, does it do any harm the way it is?
Doesn't do any harm where it is, because I mean, although it's
Is it
perfectly
confusing to
ambiguous,
leave it in?
I think I kind of like it there only because if it gives you flexibility, but if you took it out, council still probably could do it.
Well, I have a little bit of a problem with that last sentence. Council may direct to the city manager that the city planning commission carry out specific planning tasks as prescribed by Article 21 of this charter. Well, that's the article we're talking about. It's already spelled out what those are. Why do we need a sentence carrying out specific duties when we already, in this article, spell out the duties of the charter? I think it's a little redundant myself, that last sentence.
Fine with me. I can take that.
It also seems pretty convoluted. Council tells city manager, tells planning commission to do what the charter says to do.
Yeah, it says charter what to do, right, yeah.
All right, that last line is good to go. I mean, good to be deleted,
Yeah, let's delete that.
unless anyone really loves it. Okay.
All right, section 110, any other questions or comments? We'll just leave it with that one sentence deleted. So we're up to Article 22, which is city elections.
So
Section
before
111.
before
I
we-
was totally confused by this.
And before we dig into this, I guess I'll just, for one last chance, ask the threshold question. Is there any appetite or interest on the commission just totally redoing how we do elections? You know, there was some talk about whether we want to do a primary or whether we want to, if there isn't, we can go through charter by charter, but if there's someone that says, hey, we want to do a runoff system or something, that's going to take a wholesale change. So I guess before we dig into it, is there any thoughts on that? Just kind of stick with what we're doing.
That's mine.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
Cool.
Leave it the way it is.
leave it the way it is.
All right, well, let's keep going then. So you were confused by this one, Mary Jane?
Well, I couldn't understand why it says primary. To me, a primary takes place in the spring. And this talked about November. So to me, that was a general election. That was my confusion.
Right. I mean, honestly,
And
I
we
don't,
have a primary for city council.
honestly, if you just put date elections, it's probably, because it tells you exactly what the election date
Just take
is.
out the word primary, I think.
Yeah.
elections.
We don't have primaries for.
Right.
No, well, it's just saying we don't have primaries, so that's, I mean, that's the way I read it.
Can we say elections generally?
Just election.
Elections general.
Elections, the general elections generally, right?
Wait a minute, what are you doing?
Just
No, we're not doing that.
strike the word primary, strike the word primary, and just leave the word elections.
It's going to say date, semicolon, elections.
Date, semicolon, election.
Well, but primaries are for nominations, so,
But we don't have a primary.
I know, that's because we can't. That's what the charter says.
Right.
So why,
So you think primary should remain?
I think it should remain, yeah, that's, because that's what primaries are nomination elections, so.
So you're saying the primary,
I see what you're
you're saying
Primaries
it's saying primary elections because it's prohibiting it.
It's.
Yeah, it prohibits them, so.
Yeah.
Because we have one election and the top vote getters get the office, so.
Okay.
That's what it
I see
says.
what
So we
you're
don't, we
saying.
don't have a
Okay.
primary election to nominate people,
right,
which is what a primary is for, so.
So if I was,
And that's prohibited because it's.
if I was being a super freak, then I would say date primary elections prohibited in the title. But if we're not changing anything else, it's probably not worth
No, I would
confusing
change
things. But,
Yeah, I mean,
I
yeah.
leave primary in there.
so we're leaving primary in.
just leave it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, 112 is
It was
okay.
just my confusion.
Well, no, it is confusing, but Dan's probably right.
Dan's right.
Well, we've had primaries, I mean, we all know what primaries are now because we've been through this whole season, so it's the nominate people. And we don't nominate people, so that's why we don't have primary elections.
Cool. I mean,
Okay,
not,
so we can leave primary in
I think so.
because it calls out that we don't have them.
That we don't have.
Yeah, we don't have them, so, right. Make sure we don't have them.
That's right. Section 112 is the app. Any other questions on section 111? Section 112 is application of state election laws. To me, it just says we do what the state says we do, right?
yeah.
Exactly.
It does have my favorite phrase, agreeable to this charter,
Generally.
generally. But not.
Yeah, there is a but in 113, by the way.
Is there?
Yeah, there is.
However, I would add a comma and a small b
Where is it?
in 113.
No, I mean, I just haven't found it. Oh, there it is.
It shall be lawful for the city, for council at any time to redivide the city into 4 wards in compliance with general law, comma, but the number of wards shall never be reduced below 4 or increased above 4.
See,
Okay.
I find that confusing, that last part of the phrase. Number of wards, I understand never reduced below 4, but never increased above 4?
Yes, I have a problem with that as well.
I guess I have a problem with that.
Well, honestly, I don't, Jack, because if,
Why not?
I'll tell you why, because if the city council wanted to increase the number of wards, it would have to be voted on by the public in changing the charter. So they
Okay.
can't unilaterally say as a council, we're gonna have 7 wards now. What this is saying is the council doesn't have the power to change the number of wards up or down.
And why doesn't it?
Is that the way you understand it?
That's the way I understand it.
Okay, fair enough.
Megan, does that make
I
sense
just
to
found
you?
it confusing.
It's not worded very well.
Yes,
makes
I
sense.
agree with that.
Couldn't it
not
just say
worded
there's-
as
It's not worded
It's
well.
not worded well, yeah. that's-
Because why does it have to say, like, why can't it just say?
It should say the number of wards shouldn't be changed by council.
Right.
It can only be changed by
Yes,
charter. That's
right.
what, something like
I understand
that.
what you're saying,
Yes.
but
I don't think we need all the, it can't be less than 4 and it can't.
No,
be
we do
more.
not.
In other words, it's 4.
Okay, well,
Work on that, Darren?
Yeah, let's-
I will work on it. It makes me feel better because I was going to feel really bad if the only change was that but. So I need
Yeah,
to.
I think you're right. It could be just that they're in 4
Yeah.
words. and
Right.
That's,
It
yeah,
can only be changed by charter.
I
Okay.
agree with what you're saying, but I think it
Yeah.
could be worded more appropriately.
I agree.
Any other suggestions for changes in section 113? Fabulous. Section 114. Here's what I was confused by this whole thing. I was confused by this whole process being in the charter. Because isn't that what the law says we have to do? Or does the charter determine how council members, is that a power that the charter has as a charter city? We can determine how our councilmen are to be elected?
Well, I think we could have partisan elections if we wanted. You could have parties, Republicans, Democrats, and you have to, I mean,
Probably need to leave it in, I
Yeah, I just configure, I guess what I was thinking too narrowly. I was thinking that when you run, you go to the Board of Elections and you do what they tell you.
Right.
But they're doing what
They're
this
doing what
tells
the
them
city-
to
right,
do.
exactly.
Yeah, we could have a partisan elections if we want. I don't know of too many city councils like that, but we could.
Okay, no, that's fine. That makes sense in my head now.
But the petition has to be made in ink.
I saw that. Not blood, ink.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming this is all what's done now.
All I can tell you is that I have very little, obviously, impact of the elections, but since I've been here, and I think that's been 3 elections, we haven't really had any problems with any of this stuff. We had problems with some residency that came up, but
Right.
none of these things about when the dates had to be signed and the valid petition, we haven't had that problem.
Okay. Does anybody else have any problem or concerns with section 114?
I think that one consideration would be where it says is a resident of such ward, that the wording should be where the person is legally registered to vote.
Resident is a word of art.
We had something
So I
changed.
I think the word
we did this earlier.
resident really captures that. But,
Let me look at, we actually made a change to make it, we defined,
we define resident?
well, we did, but it wasn't like the super greatest thing. If you look at my packet back on section 7, we had this question. So we just took the state definition of residency is defined as the place the person has established his or her home on other than a temporary or transient basis.
Okay.
So that definition probably would apply here as well.
Bless you.
But if we wanted to clarify it, we
I
could
think it
say,
should be the same. I mean,
yeah, I mean, the word's the same, so it is defined, but we could also say as defined by section 7 if we wanted to
Yeah,
cross-reference
let's do
it.
that.
Yeah.
As
So-
defined by section 7.
Yeah.
And what line is that part on? Can someone just-
Third one
It's
down.
about the
7th or 8th down.
6th or 7th. or-
Almost in the middle of the paragraph.
The person is a resident of such ward and is nominated as ward,
So
and
I'll
I'll-
say,
as defined
As
by
defined.
that's section 7. Okay, that's good.
okay. Any other, that was a good point. Thanks, Charlotte. 115. Ballots for council elections. All that says is there's no, it's it's nonpartisan, and if you want to write it in, you got to do what the law says to write it in.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
I guess my only thought was, it says counting of votes, and I know the answer to this, but who counts the votes?
Are you on 116 or 115, Jack?
116. Oh, I'm
Okay, are
sorry.
we okay with 115?
Oh, 115, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No.
Okay, Jack.
That's okay, you saw the feature.
116.
Yes, 116.
Who counts the votes?
Board of
Or do we
Elections.
need that?
Board of
Well, I know
Elections.
that, I know that, but, let's say counting of votes, I mean, is that required or not? I mean, I don't know. I'm just,
I'm guessing, and I don't know the answer to this, Jack, I'm guessing when it says they'll be counted under the provision of general law, that's probably
where
because
does it say that? I missed
about
that.
3 lines down at
Third
the end.
line.
Oh, okay, I missed that, okay. Counted on the provision of general, law, then that would,
I only know enough to be dangerous, but there's a whole bunch of
Okay.
sections on Board of
Very good.
Elections and how they count. And there's even something about breaking a tie by lots. Did you know that?
yeah.
And they can decide however they want to do it. That's my knowledge for the day.
Okay.
Are you okay with that, Jack?
I am, absolutely.
Anything else to discuss on 116 then? 117, which allows council to use voting machines on other devices.
This one's kind of weird because I don't know if we have that power anymore because the Board of Elections is the ones that certifies those
Right.
machines. I guess it's never really come up, so we can leave it, but
I'm wondering, just because it seems like the Board of Elections has some procedural authority over all of this. Is there some way we can call that out in the beginning
I
of
think
this
that it
section?
actually does.
Well, sometimes it says for like the provisions of general law, but I didn't know exactly if it called out the county board, because that was my question on 117 is, can we actually do this, or is this an authority that resides with the county board of elections?
I would probably say this is the county board of elections thing, and I would, if I was being completely clean up, I would just take this section out because I don't think it's a power city council probably even wants. I'm looking at the fact that it was done in 84, and I'm wondering if that was when we were moving towards, you know, these different ballot machines and things. And now everything, you go in there and you have to use that one that Board of Elections has. So I don't think we'd be killing ourselves by taking it out completely, just knowing that it's going to be done by the Board of Elections. But I don't know who's been here long enough to know if that's ever come up. Dan? Jack?
Well, I've
I'm
been here
guessing
long
we
enough
may-
to know that at one point we were writing,
Paper ballots,
at
right?
one point we were punching, and now it's electronic.
Yeah.
I don't know that it makes a whole lot of difference to me to leave it in. There may be a time when that changes and we do have
Power
some
in.
input.
I was thinking about the same thing, suppose Board of Election, you know, I don't know what they could say.
Hmm.
Hey, council, you all, tell us how you want your votes counted. I don't know.
I don't
It,
know.
it probably doesn't kill anybody to have it there only because no one's using it. So I'm okay keeping it. It's just
All right.
weird.
Section 118, anything else on 117? On 118, I bet we had the whole, everybody had the whole in 1953
Yeah.
thing.
I have a question back at 117. Does giving them power to approve and consent also have the flip side of that power to not consent and just like disapprove it?
If it ever came up and you asked Darren Shulman, city attorney, I would say city council does not have that authority because it doesn't say they have the power to
Say no.
say no, basically.
Okay.
I don't think it could be made the other way, saying, well, no, they have to approve everything. But if you're asking my legal opinion, I would say, no, you can just approve what you want, new things that you want done, but you can't stop what's already there.
That was my only clarification question with that.
But I will tell you, the next city attorney could come up with a different, I mean, it's not ironclad.
Yeah, I am also not a lawyer, so.
I mean, that actually could come up though, because when those new machines came out, they were pretty controversial because some people were saying they
That's
weren't the
why I was
best
thinking
ones.
about this, because it's more likely that they will disapprove it than approve it.
Right.
So how is this?
I would say if we wanted to push that issue, we would go to court and we'd 50-50 chance that we'd win or whatever. And then the election would be over.
More of a curiosity than anything.
And Darren's going to be here for another 50 years anyway. so.
I'm turning out the lights. We've already determined that.
Are you okay with that, Megan?
Yes.
All right. Section 118, the determination of successful candidates. And with that 1950, somehow that has to be
So here's,
reworded to say what we do.
right, and it's tough because I'd have to figure that out because what they've done is they've counted from 1953 and it keeps going. So if I just take it out, we'll get confused as to which year it is.
Right.
So I could look into picking another arbitrary date or we can just leave it with 53. I don't know if, do you want me to update the date so it's now or whatever?
Well, when I read that too, I thought, well, how do we know where we are?
Right, if we don't have it there, you have to keep,
You have to keep track of it somehow. I guess,
what's
I
your
don't
thought,
know.
Charlie? You look like you had a reaction.
No, I have a reaction to this paragraph, but not to that. I can't count that in my head, so.
How about this? I will go back and I will try to do some math and just figure out if we can say 2018, like we did that with another one, and that'll be easier math for people. And if we decide that's not worth doing, we can
okay, all
vote it down.
right.
Okay,
Charlotte?
so mine is the first sentence, and unless I had a weird dream, we talked about this once before. With regard to the wards, the candidate in each ward who received the greatest number of votes cast shall be a member of council from such ward. But what if that person has 27%
Right, we did
of
talk
the
about
vote? But we talked about that, so it must be in here somewhere else.
Well, no, I think I brought it up at the very first meeting because it was brought to me by a member of the public. And so it came up under suggestions from the public on
Okay.
that part of the agenda. And we did talk about it, which is why Darren asked at the beginning of the section, do we want to overhaul the whole thing and have runoffs and all that kind of stuff? And I don't know if this is where we would address that.
Well, yeah, I think it is because it says in it talks about how the three members who received the most votes, or the three candidates who received the most votes, are elected.
Yeah, if we did want to
Does it-
change it, we would change it here. With that said, if we were going to do some sort of runoff type thing, I'd have to go back and change the election date thing, and it actually would be a primary at that point of sorts, or something like that. It wouldn't be a partisan primary, but it'd be a primary. So I can still do it. We haven't crossed that bridge, but yeah,
But is it possible just to say whoever received the greatest number of votes? Can we, I don't know, do we want to arbitrarily put in a percentage? I don't know.
No, because you could have 50 people running for the same office, and they each get a couple of percentages, and so the highest vote getter could be like 20%.
Right, yeah, and I thought that's one of the, well, at least the people who talked to me about it, that was their concern, that this person is being elected, but not by a majority of the
Yeah.
voters.
Well, then you need to have a runoff.
Yeah.
It's the only way to do it.
and we have to figure out, and it would be fun to figure it out. We have to figure out when they're going to be. Are we going to move our election? Because we don't have a prime. I mean, when would the second runoff be? You know, would it be just another election, or would it
Well,
be?
You'd have to set another date, and council would have to agree to pay for it.
Right, there's a budget
Right.
consideration there.
And the other thing, just so the commission knows, because I've looked into this, we pay the cost of the election, but we split it with all of the other elections going on. So when there's lots of issues and things on the ballot, it's cool because we split it with all the school districts and the county. But if we were like, we got to pick a runoff 2 weeks from now and it was just us, we would be paying for the whole thing. So it could be potentially expensive.
What's the probability of this happening? Like, what is the actual probability of this happening?
Well, it's pretty good because if you have 3 people running,
So this has happened in the past.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime you have more than 2 candidates, it's going to happen.
I mean, it could be one that swamps the other 2. They get 51, the other 2 get 25, but it's, you could say 34, 33, 33, and there you are. I think we had someone win with 20. Didn't
I
Councilman
think that
Brushman?
was when Andy won with,
Yeah, anyone.
There were 6 people running from the 4th Ward.
I think he won like 26%.
26%. And what a legacy we
This is a
have.
biggie.
This is a biggie. And I'm sorry, I mean, I feel funny putting my 2 cents in since I was personally involved in that, but are you representative of your ward or not? I mean, that is the entry point for the citizens I mean, I'm fortunate that the mayor lives in my ward, so she gets every haranguing call from me.
Sitting right there.
They're rattling the street. But the reality is the at-large candidates they have a different relationship with the citizenry than the wards where you live on the street. They know where your house is. I just think it's a more personal relationship. And we've talked at times about, do we need more wards, or have we grown too much, or I don't know. I feel kind of strongly about that one, cognizant of how expensive runoff elections are. But given that, it may, I mean, there's not anybody who wants to run for office should run for office, but 6 people out of 1 ward is a little extreme. People might not be as willing to jump in. And my other point about that is it's expensive to run a city. But running it right is more important than worrying about what it costs, I think, and having representative elected officials.
We would probably, I'm trying to think through my head because I'm not good at dates and math, but if we were to do a runoff, the election is in November and they get sworn in.
Next Monday.
It's like,
Monday after
it's
the election.
pretty,
2 weeks.
Yeah.
something
2
like that.
weeks.
so we'd have to push back the swearing in to give time for the runoff,
You could have the primary in
We would
March
elect-
when we did the Ohio,
or you can move up the primary. Yeah, you can move up the primary too.
if you're going to do it that way.
So in March, you're calling it a primary, but it would still be a nonpartisan.
Yeah, well, it would probably be, we wouldn't even necessarily call it a primary, we'd call it the election, and then you'd say if nobody reaches 50%, there'll be a runoff of the top 2 candidates, November or whatever. But that would be a pretty big shift in our way we do things. 'Cause now you'd have, well, it's not a bad thing, but you'd have people who knew they're getting in March if there was no need for runoff, and they're kind of hanging out until, you know, January, and they might be lame duck for that whole time if they lost a re-election or.
The other alternative would be to let the election stay in November, but change the swearing in to allow time to do a runoff. And I have no idea how much time that would be needed for that.
Correct. And there's no reason that date has to be there, although it's in the charter, so you have to move that. But
My opinion is, this is a big change.
It's a huge change.
That's a huge-
And I think if we were going to make a change like this, we need more input from the constituents of the city to want to do this, because it's
But
got,
remember, Kathy, the final decision on this is the constituents. They're going to vote on this.
Yeah.
We're not making any changes. We're recommending, and then it all has to go to the population to vote on.
Well, the council first. so.
Yeah, right. The council can out it,
yeah,
say no, and then it has to go to the public.
Yeah.
And if they choose not to approve it, it stays the way it is.
okay.
So I think they have their opportunity to speak. Yes, no, do you think?
I think what Kathy says, no one's really had an uproar of, you know.
Yeah, there's
it's-
not been an uproar, and I think the numbers thing is also imperfect. So if you said, let's have a runoff and only 2 can compete instead of 6, you know, in the November, so that we ensure that somebody's got to get over 50%. You know, numbers of who shows up at the primary sometimes are significantly different than who shows up in November.
You could have only 10 people show up in that
Yeah, and I
runoff.
think
or
putting
whatever.
more process onto the voters, I'm not sure gets us a better.
Well, and I also think, and I was the one that brought this up through one of the folks who called me about it. But then I started, when I was looking at the election in, when did we have election? March? And there were judges, there were some elections, there were 5 or 6 people at the state level or the county level, and they got elected at 22 or 28% or whatever it was. So, and then I started thinking, well, you know, maybe it's okay. I mean, it works other places, maybe it's okay.
I feel comfortable with it as is. It's not perfect, but I mean, in a lot of ways, our election system is not perfect, and overall, it serves us very well. I feel
It's not
comfortable.
too late to reconsider my funky you vote for your preference people and rank them in order.
Oh, no, that's
Oh,
terrible.
no.
That's
So,
terrible.
I was waiting for my spot for like 12 meetings. And I almost had
Say
it.
that again?
You would rank your first, second, and third choice. And if your first choice lost, then your vote would move to the second choice. Hey, it guarantees you get
Yeah,
over
here,
50.
Here we go.
All right. I'm sorry.
Kathy, I hear what you're saying. If we're going to change this, should we ask the public if they want it changed? But I think that's what the election is going to do. They get to say whether or not they want it changed.
Yeah, to me, this seems like such a big change. I would want there to be something that was compelling me to want to change it. So where I'm sitting right now, I don't feel there's anything compelling me to change it.
Darren, is there a process, 2 questions. Is there a process by which the suggested or proposed changes we educate the public to those?
I was wondering the same thing.
From the time that the council approves them and they
Until the
go to
time that they vote.
do we have an opportunity at that point to set up
A public-
forums, open
yeah.
houses or whatever to discuss these?
So I can answer one answer I know the answer to, one I don't. So I don't know what they've done in the past because I haven't been here. But do we have the opportunity to? Oh yeah, we can do lots of stuff. Just similar to what they're doing with the levy thing. So it's all a matter of time and communication. At a minimum, I will write sort of a cover report on our changes to present to council. I'll send it to everyone, look at it, make sure. We'll do a formal presentation. You all be welcome to come to that council meeting, but you're certainly not required if you have lives and everything. But so we'll present it to council. I'm assuming Lee will push it out. Our communications director will push it out on our social media, and we'll talk about it on our radio show. So we will do things, and if there's even more interest, we could have meetings and things like that. Anything is possible. I can tell you that we've been plugging this Charter Review Commission as much as we can, and you've seen the overwhelming interest that's attendees and everything. So I can say whatever I want. Just kidding. I don't know if there'll be an appetite for people really wanting to dig into it, but if there is, we can have forums and do things. And I love talking about this stuff, so I'd go anywhere they ask. So
Does the commission have I shouldn't say the authority, should the commission recommend to council to follow some sort of educate the public process? Can that be part of the final report?
I will agree with that because I remember in the past, before I was heavily involved with, community, I remember voting on these things and I wasn't expecting to vote on all of these things. So I was standing there at the voting machine, reading line by line and making sure that I agreed with it. It took me like everyone thought I was crazy, but I spent like 40 minutes at the voting machine because I was like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting this.
Well, and I know we don't have the authority to tell council to do that.
Well, we
but
can
could
push
that
it
be
out
part
on
of our
utility bills.
recommendations?
Yeah, we can push it on the utility bills as well as social media. And I think it's better if you don't put it all out at once
I agree.
because
Mhm.
somebody's not going to sit there and read the whole thing. And that's what I stressed to do over the moving Delaware forward too.
And so here's the other question that I've been thinking about, and I've never gone through this. My understanding, limited as it is that you can put it out as here's our new charter, which would be one thing to vote on, or you can put it out as each individual amendment section. I will say, when they're sitting there,
Yeah.
voting, I'm kind of torn because we have a lot of changes in here that are stylistic, and I don't want to have someone vote on 50 issues. I'm just trying to figure out, I don't know if I can break it off into, hey, these are just cleanup and these are substantive so people can really get into it. I don't know if I can do that, but I'll have to look. Dan, you have an
You
idea?
have to do it section by section or as a
As a whole.
document.
So we're probably just with the number of changes, we're probably going to want to do it as a whole, but maybe that's something we'll decide on when we vote on it, what we want to recommend. But the problem with that is, let's say we did propose a change to have this runoff thing and everyone hated that. Then they're going to vote to kill our whole charter changes because that's the one thing that was so controversial. Because I don't think anything else we've done in here is really controversial. So that's the kind of thing we have to think about when we're doing this kind of stuff.
And then my second question was, let's presume that we look at this and say, while we have some discomfort with it, on balance, it's okay. Can we ask council to, in the next 8 years, do some investigation, do some work to try and help in the next commission, the next charter commission, to have a little bit more information to really study this and bring that commission, statistical data and other ways of doing it, because we are kind of running out of time to tackle this.
I like
If
that
we
idea a
agree
lot.
that this is okay, I would like to qualify it by saying, but I think it really deserves to be studied.
Yes.
Yes, we can do that. I would put that in my report that goes with the thing and say that the commission recommends it. We discussed the possibility of requiring 50% runoff. This time we didn't recommend a change, but we recommend council look into this in preparation of the next charter review and gather information in comparable cities and stuff like that. So I think those are the kind of things that are perfect for the cover notes, so give a little flavor as to what we discussed and what we're talking about and kind of give direction. Similar with, we also looked at maybe expanding wards,
Right.
but we decided not this time. So that might be another thing where we say this is one of the things we,
Caveat should be added for the wards as well.
yeah, you might want to look into this next time. So when they come up next time, they can look at them and say, oh, these are things that they looked at. Let's pick up early on and start
We
looking at
talked
them.
about that 8 years ago. Not the
Yeah,
last time we
we
talked
did.
about doing
Yeah, we
it.
did.
I think I did 3 charter commissions and I think we looked at it every time.
Every time.
So if we've looked at it 3 times, how can we actually take it somewhere the next time? Because I don't want it to keep being looked at and discussed. And so what do we need to do to ensure that it's actually being seriously considered?
Well, I will say, I feel like we did seriously consider, like, I don't think, and this one's a big change, but I think, especially with the number of wards, I feel, and I've known this before, that we really did discuss it and give it thought, and we just decided that based on the population that we have right now, it's not really necessary to do it, but we did feel that the way we're growing, by next time it might be necessary. So I think by putting that in there, which is, we think it's a good idea, but our population doesn't support it, the next folks who pick up the report will say, well, I can look at the census and we've gone up from 40 to 100,000 each ward.
Some kind of an overflow guidance, because, when it happens slowly, the progression doesn't seem like that much, but if in 8 years, if you add up the total, that's a pretty significant amount of change.
Yeah.
So I guess what are the guidelines to that? So what kind of increase do we have to see to the population to make that necessary? And then,
That's some of what needs
Then
to
we're
be
going to make a
decided.
charter change.
Yeah, but then we're gonna make a
Yeah.
charter change, or we're going to.
You know, council,
Some of what
yeah,
needs
we
to
make
be decided.
recommendations to council, but council can take our recommendations
Yeah.
and they can
Right.
adopt them, reject them, or even add their own
Yeah.
absolutely.
to go on the ballot. So we just are giving recommendations about things. So I think what Darren says, you might want to look at this. Council can say yes or no. We are a small town after all still. We're not exploding and we don't have people charging in there saying, I'm not represented because I don't have a ward that consists of me and my neighbor.
So we are getting an IKEA and a Tanger outlet, which we don't know what it's going to do.
Yeah.
I would say that what I would see happen is we put our report, hey, these are some things we really discussed, and here's why we didn't do it. And then council could, Carol can tell me if I'm wrong, council could look and say, you know what, we really like that idea. Let's, Darren, because I probably the one doing it, can you look at how many wards there are in other cities comparable to us? And can you give us a further
I
report?
think it's necessary to do a comparable study with other cities because
But that's up to council.
But, I
Yeah.
think there's some
To make that
accountability for this commission too, because, those of you youngins over there, you're going to be around in another 8
Yeah,
years.
include me too.
Yeah.
well, I mean,
But, and so,
Right.
and council meetings are open to the public, and if this is something you feel strongly about, you go to council meeting and you say, hey, what
that's why I
happened
was
to
like-
that?
I'm doing the math and I'm like, okay, when do I need to take off work to ensure that I can get to the council meeting?
But I'm saying that what I'm saying is that that's also the role of this commission, is to
Absolutely.
follow that through. And if I felt like it was necessary for me to come and nag Carolyn every once in a while, I'd do that.
I also have bad news for you. If you've noticed, there are folks on this commission who have been on the Charter Review Commission before.
Yeah, you'll probably be here
You're
again.
probably going to get called first in 8
Yeah.
years, unless you move, in which case you don't care if we change our charter.
I hope so.
Are you hoping I move?
No, I'm hoping I'm alive in 8 years.
Well, you can go
hoping I'm not
Right.
No, I've been dealing with nightmare situations all across the United States based on what the government has done and things that have been neglected and so I have this nightmare living in the back of my brain and I'm like, I can't let this happen to Delaware.
Well,
This over my dead body.
and
will happen to
if it makes you feel any better, I hope to make it 8 more years, but ever since I got here, I was keeping notes of everything that came up that was a problem, and we've gone over them all at these meetings. So if I'm still here, when something else comes up, I will the next year have my notes to keep addressing. So maybe that's
an.
an
Leave them in your.
Well, I would like,
yes.
I'd like to second Mary Jane's recommendation that I think on the issue of wards and the issue of elections, we should have some data to look at
Yes.
before the next commission starts. And I know it's 8 years down the road, but perhaps council should put something together in anticipation of that makes the decision a little bit more clear.
Let's put this in our recommendation cover amendment that we recommend that council request a report from staff, and we'll put in by, let's say, 2 more years.
That's
to make
all
it
really
reasonable.
we can do.
But
That's
council
okay, that's all we
can,
can
as we've learned, council can tell the city manager, we like this information.
Yeah.
And
Right.
they can make, and I'll be the one doing it, to be honest, so. So, yeah, I think that'll happen. But
Okay.
these are things that, if this is interesting enough, even if you don't put it in the report, if this is interesting enough to the, 7, 8 of you, I'll go and do this on my own just to get the information, because this is what this is about. And so I didn't know that coming into this one, but I will know next time. So I'll figure it out on my own just for interest's sake, so.
Well, under the presumption that section 18 will not have any major change, 118, I'm sorry, major changes to it, are there any other comments or questions on the way it is currently written that we'd like to have Darren address?
I'm hoping for a tie sometime while I'm on Sue.
So you can draw lots?
Yeah.
Hearing none, and you're going to look at the 1953 and see whether we can update that year. Or-
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll try to do the math, and it won't be hard, because what I'll do is I'll figure out, looking forward, when our next wards versus council, and I'll put, starting in 2000, I'll just put 2017,
Sure.
2019, we'll just start from there.
All right, thank you. All right, Any other comments or questions on 118? All right, we're up to Article 23, miscellaneous provisions. And 119 talks about compensation of officers and employees.
So here's something that is kind of interesting that's come up since I've been here. So Dean brought up this question of what's a department head versus what's an employee. So when I got here, the department heads were kind of in a range, but it was never really approved by council because they just didn't do it. So we changed it when I was here that in the budget, it actually does spell out what their actual salary is, which I thought was important for transparency's sake anyway. But it just it does get kind of confusing how city manager and department heads established by charter are fixed by ordinance, and then the salaries of other people can be fixed by ordinance or within a range set by council. So I don't know if it makes sense because we've kind of cleaned up the charter department. So I don't know if it just makes sense to say either it's set by ordinance or it's set by ordinance or a range set by council. Just treat them the same. I don't know if it makes sense to clean that up. Did I just make any sense at all? Probably not.
Yeah, run that by me one more time.
Okay, so charter department heads and the city manager, their salary has to be set by ordinance. All other employees and I don't know if they're, what does it say? All other employees is set by ordinance or in limits set by ordinance. So that would be
A range.
So council would say, hey, well, we're giving you the flexibility, Homan, to hire your Parks and Rec director. Just pay him between 70 and 80,000. You pick. It's easier that way because it gives him a little flexibility. But if we're okay with that, I would recommend we just do that for all of the department heads because otherwise it's just kind of confusing. Who's a department head? Who is it? Who gets the range? Who doesn't? And we did just strip out kind of public works from the charter, so I don't even know who's in the charter besides me and Dean. So I would keep the city manager fixed by ordinance and then the rest maybe within a range. But I don't know, Carolyn, you got some experience with this. What's your thoughts?
I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out what you were saying earlier.
So
I lost it a little bit ago.
okay, so department heads, you have to say Darren makes X.
Right.
Other people, you don't have to. You can say Darren can make between X and Y. It's just weird because it's not clear the difference between the Darren who has to have
Right.
X and the not Darren who could be between X and Y because it's department heads get the X, but then it says all other officers can be between X and Y.
So your suggestion is that all salaries, with perhaps the exception of city manager, be within a range?
Potentially, could be. It just gives council the opportunity to say, hey, look, pay them this amount or this amount. The reason I say that is because it's doable, but let's say I leave tomorrow. So my salary is set by ordinance right now in the budget. But if I leave tomorrow, you got to hire somebody. Are you going to hire them and are they locked into what
Exactly.
Darren made?
Right.
You have to recruit them. So then it's just kind of weird how to do that. The council could say that, or they could say, Tom, you're paying this person. But it's hard for executive level recruiting to
Right.
have a salary. Now, we do disclose it in the budget, to be clear, but even the range might add some flexibility there.
Darren, I think your suggestion makes a lot of sense.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
I will try to clean it up and bring it back, and if you hate it, I
Yes,
won't take it
please.
personally.
Did we?
You know, the only problem, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The only problem I have with that is it sets limits. And so if the manager wanted, because of recruiting concerns or competition or whatever, wanted to hire somebody that's outside the limits, it wouldn't be able to do that.
But don't we set limits now because it's in the ordinance?
Well, the ordinance sets what the salaries are for most
Yeah,
of the
that's
department
right.
heads.
So that would be a limit, right?
Yeah, but you can change it, and I guess you could change the range, but why put a range in there? I don't know. It's okay with me.
I mean, in
It just
reality,
overly complicates things when the manager, if the manager says, I need to hire so-and-so, and the salary for like positions in other places is this, and so to be competitive, we have to set a salary at this level. And that's not, obviously, council's going to have to change the ordinance, the pay ordinance, to do that for that person. But if it were, I suppose if it's within the limits, but are your limits broad enough to cover that situation, or do you care? I don't know, so.
From my experience at the library, we always set up ranges, salary ranges for employees, and with the exception of Pages, which were minimum wage. And that allowed me as the person hiring to reward somebody if they had more experience. It also made it easier for the budget because it could never be more than X. So,
And I would agree with that, where there are a lot of people doing the same job or similar jobs. And then you have a range of salary, and we still do step increases and things like that based
For
on.
not for department heads, but
No,
for,
not for department heads.
but for other, yeah.
For the employees that are performing similar services and have the same position or similar position, we have a pay range, and they step up through that pay range. And but I think department heads have different, I mean, they're unique to their department for the most part. They each have different skills, different education, different backgrounds, different times of service in those positions. And it seems to me that's a little different than some of the other jobs in the city.
And I'll be honest with you, Dan, I see what you're saying about having that cap. Striking this one particular language about fixed by ordinance doesn't make it more restrictive because that's already there.
Yeah.
It actually allows us to do the range, which council could set as higher, but right now we can't even technically do the range. And it's weird because we probably, in reality, there is a range, but the charter says you have to do it according to ordinance. So I've had to work very carefully with Dean to try to get it so he's happy. So we've finally gotten there, but your approach is right, Dan. But what would happen is we would go to city council and say, hey, we want this to be the range for the department heads or for this particular department head, and then we could always raise that up. But I think council's going to want to have that hold on it. They don't want Tom to just say, okay, I need another $100,000.
No. I agree. And I think that he would, I mean, I guess now he would, unless he's going to hire somebody at a different salary than the current person is leaving, he would have to come to council anyway for a department head.
Right.
So
And I think he did when he budgeted for the new Parks and Rec director.
I guess my thought is I kind of like the idea of the range because it gives some flexibility in that. Even I understand what you're saying, Dan, that we may have to go back to amend the ordinance, but it seems like if you've got a range that I'm not saying it would, it may help to minimize the potential of having to go back to ordinance if you've got a range. I don't know whether that's true or not, but it seems to me that might help to minimize that. And either way, you may have to go back and amend the ordinance.
Does city council have to approve the hiring and the salary range of all new employees?
They
Once it's in the budget, it's,
No, it's the
yeah.
You mean once, the budget, I was kind of hedging because the budget is that approval of the range and
Right.
because you have the classifications and all that. So once they approve, they don't then come back and say, can I now hire this person?
So the only time it would come back to council is if the salary, either the salary or the salary range needed to be
Need to be
changed.
changed.
Here's an example. I hired very recently a part-time investigator for the prosecutor's office, and I came to council and said, this is the range I recommend with the steps. I place it in the steps. And I think I can get a candidate for that. We did interviews. One candidate stood out and the other three were not even hireable for what we wanted. So I came back to council and said, can you amend my range so I can then go and hire this fellow? So I would do that still now because it was outside the range, but that's the process by which they gave me approval. Then they gave me a little bit more approval so I could pay for this other fellow.
And so, but your suggested change though really it has to do with more making that range more inclusive in
Yes,
terms of personnel and not
That's-
calling out these specific.
exactly. It basically just throws in directors or heads of departments into that range ability. And I don't want to get too much into it, but when Dean was here last week, you probably got a flavor of, there was a lot of debates as to what is a department head? Is this a department head or is this a not department head? Is this a charter department? Is this not? And I was like, man, this is giving me a headache. So this would clean up that headache as well.
And so if we took out the city manager and just made every other employee or officer,
I would say the salaries or compensation of the city clerk, we can leave in his or her assistants because there aren't any right now, and of the city manager shall be fixed by ordinance. Salaries or compensation of all other officers or employees appointed under the authority of the city manager shall be fixed by ordinance or but within limits established by ordinance. So we're really just saying, and that makes sense if you think about it, because those are the two that are hired by city council,
City council.
and then they're giving the manager authority to hire other people.
Right.
And just so I'm clear, police chief, assistant police, assistant fire, who are union, the assistants?
Only
Uh,
the
the-
chief.
Only the chief,
The chief and the two assistant chiefs,
Oh, that's right.
not union.
they're not.
That's right.
That's right.
But they're hired by the city manager, not by council?
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm sort of distressed by that last sentence that I guess they set the compensation at 0.
Yes, and we actually, Jack was on the
I was
commission.
on civil service when we did it because I instigated that because I didn't want to get paid because that put me into the public employees retirement system and that what I'm trying to do individually. And it was a pittance of, so.
$200 a year or something.
Yeah, and I
Just messed up
said, just
everything.
forget it, just forget the salary, we'll just do it. And
So
that was years ago.
I'm glad that, well, you gave it up years ago. I'm glad Jack was still on the commission because I actually had to go to the commission and say, I'm doing an ordinance to make your salary 0.
Yeah, right,
You know how awkward that is to tell someone I'm cutting
yeah,
your,
right. cut
but
it.
Jack was like, no, I'm good with it. So
That-
it is
I was-
currently
I was
0
fine
for
with
both.
it. Yeah.
So Darren, the language that you just
Struck.
talked about, you're going to put that in writing for us
You clean up.
about the limits? You're going to clean that up for us?
Oh, yeah, I'll send
Okay, good.
Does everybody feel okay about that?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, adding that, I'm okay with it too.
Every time I take notes on here, and then I'm going to send you out we're almost
Like
done,
this
but
thing.
what's going to happen is before the next meeting, I'm going to send you, just like I did this time, so we'll knock out the ones that you haven't seen in paper, and then we'll have everything else, and assuming we're okay with everything, we'll vote on that whole document, and we'll be done, because we're so close, Mary Jane, I can't even tell you.
Yeah, we are pretty close, and I have to
Mary's gonna- Mary Jane's
scoot.
gonna have to leave in about 4 minutes. but-
Yeah. Section 120 on fees. That pretty much says if you're getting money, you got to give it to Dean, right?
Yes.
That's pretty much what it says. Any questions on 120? Nope. 121? That kind of to that chart that we don't have, but it just says they get to employ who they think they need, right?
It does, but it also says that it's the city council that's approving it, which is what we do in our annual budget every year, and if we have to change it to add someone, we go to council, and that's fine, that should be the way it is.
Yeah.
Any other comments on 121? 122? Just says you're going to be bonded, right?
Yeah, there's something called government officials bonding, and a lot of companies are getting out of it, but that state has to do that too.
And then 123 is the oath of office, and it is spelled out in here, which makes sense to me.
Mhm.
124 is investigations.
This feels like Groundhog Day.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
right.
Back to the.
Yeah, I think we already did this. Didn't we already do this?
Yeah, we did this.
We kind of already did that one.
Yeah, I think we did.
No. I hope the other one we did was fine, because my brain's turning jello when we're so close.
Well, does it need to be in here? Should we scratch it?
I thought I literally thought that
We
exact
did with
language.
investigations
We
and
might wanna-
audits.
we might want to take a look at both of them
Yeah.
together. and see.
Yeah.
I'm going to flip through and see where it was,
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's take a look.
Yeah, let's make sure we're not redundant on that.
because it looks very, very,
It's familiar. It was under when the city manager was, what was that under?
I'm looking. I'll keep looking if you want to
Okay,
keep
we'll let
going.
Darren come back. We'll come back to 124. 125 is, talks about agreements, contract, and legislation. It's pretty straightforward unless y'all have questions. 126, authentication of charter. My only question was, do we want to put anything in there about being electronic copies?
Oh, let me look at
It
it. Sorry.
says, shall be executed in quadruplicate and all 4 original copies deposited with clerk of city council after the 1951 election.
Yeah, I'm going to probably fix this one up because we don't
Okay.
probably have 4 copies. I'll just put update.
But I would like to allow for electronic.
Yes.
I think that's
Any other questions on 126? 127, just sort of made me laugh.
That's kind of, must be the Dan Bennington rule, Dan, because you were city attorney.
That was
weren't
me,
you?
no, that wasn't me.
Oh.
That was 95.
It was
so
probably
this is
me.
one that happened.
Have a real thing about
Cauldron's
that.
responsible for this one.
Article 24 is amendments to the charter, and this is really what we're doing now. It's going through the process by which the charter has to be looked at every 8 years. And then the process that happens, which is we look at it, we recommend to council, and it has to eventually go to the population the electors for approval or not. And section 25, section 129, I'm sorry, Article 25 just says if it's invalid, it's invalid.
That is a standard contract thing where if the court says you can't do this one section, it doesn't kill the whole
Doesn't kill the
document. It
whole
just
document.
kills that one section that's invalid. And I think I might have the mystery of the investigations figured out. I think we talked about it because it was in a model charter,
Mhm.
and the model charter had it really early under council power, so there was a lot of discussion as to whether we should put it in.
Oh, that's right.
But I think we said, so I guess it looks, we were smarter than we thought, because I think we actually had it in already. We just didn't know
Really
it.
smart. Okay,
So it's
all
added.
right. So,
I'll confirm that, but I think that's what I'm thinking in my notes.
so we have done what we were asked to do, which was go through the whole charter, and it is now up to Darren to come back with our recommendations, and we will then vote on those. The next meeting is June 9th.
So this is what I would recommend we do on June 9th. First, we'll just make sure we're cool with the language I come up with based on the changes today. That'll also include, I think it was 90 or 70 that David's still working on. When we vote on that, then we'll just vote on the whole document. Now, if I can get my stuff together, I will also have a draft cover letter report that we can review and make changes to, so we can get some of these concepts in and add anything we want. We can approve that, then we'll be done. I think we can do it.
If we meet on June 9th, I know many of us have conflicts on June 23rd. So if we can't finish it June 9th, we're going to have to find another date.
I think we can finish it, because
I think we can too.
if you're okay doing a little bit of work outside, and by that I mean review the document I send out with all the changes so we can hit anything we need, because we've already looked at this stuff. We can hit it. That's gonna be a quick vote. I'll also try to send out a copy of my cover note early so we can kind of dig into that. And it'll really just be, it'll probably be the shortest meeting ever, unless we have unless I put butts in generally in my report. It could be really fast, but it'll be fun. So.
Us.
Go us.
Hearing another comments, questions, or concerns?
I would make a motion that
ask
we
for a motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
I will make that motion.
Jack, is there a second?
Second.
Second for Megan. All those in favor, walk out the door.
Okay.
Run.
We got you on time.
I know, I have to sign
Good for
something.
you.
I'm sure I'll wax emotional and philosophical next meeting, but I do want to thank everybody for, this has been a really